I'd like to introduce our final speaker of the day, Shreepriya Dogra, joining us from our own University of Minnesota, so row the boat. She's going to take questions at the end of her talk, and so if you would hold on to your questions, and we'll take them when we're done. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome to Shreepriya.
Thank you for being here, especially this being the last session of the day. So this work, I've been doing this with my advisor, Dr. Bruna, and she isn't here to present, but I'm presenting this work. And I will start with talking a little bit about myself, like what is my relationship with data and data science, and then I will go into the topic. So my intro is in like 3 phases. The first phase is where I was doing computer science, and I did my bachelor's, master's in computer science. I was a research intern where I was working with safety critical systems, so data from like airplanes and things like that. And then I was a senior engineer where I was working with networking data. And then a technical program manager. But most of this, I would say, was data about machines and not about human beings. And then from here, I decided to jump into academia and start teaching. So I took up a position that's called a teaching fellow. And this is what I would call like a co-instructor, where the professor would come and give lectures, but you did everything else. And these were introductory courses which had like 500 students. So you would divide them into batches and labs and things like that. And this is where I got interested in learning analytics. And I was wondering, because I was not able to connect to each of the student that was in the classroom, I was wondering, like, how can I use data that is provided by, say, the LMS to help these students? And I also got a postgraduate diploma in data science. So, so this was during the pandemic. And then I realized that there was a lot that was not being talked about, especially when the data was about human beings, about educational systems. And that's when I jumped into this phase 3, where right now I'm doing a PhD in learning technologies. And also this PhD program is in the College of Education. So how we look at data, even in relation to learning analytics in a College of Science and Engineering, is very different from how you look at it in a College of Education. So I experienced some of those changes. And here I'm going to talk about how to use these critical lenses on data and talk about things like power in data, ethics, and voices that are included or excluded. So this is my talk, Reimagining Data-Driven Decision-Making. And one of the, I think, big things when we talk about data-driven decision-making, we think about improving learning outcomes, teaching effectiveness, and also institutional efficiency, amongst other things. And we have used dashboards, analytics, even AI, and things that we want to do is personalize education, which was one of the things that I wanted to do when I first started teaching, and have evidence-based predictions, early and adaptive interventions, and so many other things. And also, like now, because AI is being included into this, I think it's not really helpful, because there are some underlying problems that analytics without AI was not able to solve. So I think in the last session also, we heard that AI is amplifying problems where there are already problems. So I'm going to talk more about it. So like I said, is using AI an upgrade? And we are not solving the fundamental problems, and some of those are over-reliance on quantifiable metrics, bias, inequity, and a lack of transparency. So what is underneath all these dashboards and predictions? And behind all of these intelligent systems is something that all of these systems run on, and something that is very human. So that is, and I think probably everybody guessed it, is the actual data. So I want to start by saying that all of these data is not created equal. And why I say that is because of how we understand data, define data, what is being counted as data. So what we usually count is logins, clicks, submissions, time on task, and so many other things. And what is being left out here is lived experiences of students, students' voices, teachers' expertise, reflections, cultural contexts, and so on. So a lot of things are being left out, and there are various reasons that I think are supporting what is being counted and what is not. So these exclusions aren't accidental. They are design choices shaped by power, convenience, and institutional priorities. And another thing which was a very late realization to me was that data doesn't just exist. So a lot of us think about data as the new oil or as a natural resource which is just there waiting for it to be discovered. But that is not the case. Data doesn't exist in isolation. It is defined, produced, and processed by people who have specific goals and constraints. And each stage involves choices that shape what we see, what we ignore, and who benefits. So when data goes wrong, it has a lot of big consequences. And I want to talk about two stories from the educational world where data was treated as neutral and there was harm that followed. So the first example is from Cathy O'Neill's book, Weapons of Math Destruction. And there, Cathy talks about how Washington, D.C. Implemented something called an impact system that used to run an algorithm, which was a black box, to find out how the teacher was performing. And one of the things that this system was doing, it was calculating the difference between students' predicted score and the actual score. And the difference was attributed to the teacher's effectiveness. So one of the teachers, Sarah, she was a highly regarded teacher. Parents, students, principals, everybody was really happy with her. She was flagged ineffective by this algorithm. And she was fired along with 205 other teachers. And there was no way to appeal to this black box. So the model ignored the evidence of teaching quality. Also, there was no way through which the model could have been given feedback from all of these other ways which were not numerical. So this is one example. Another example that I really like is from Meredith Broussard's book, More Than a Glitch. And Meredith talks about how in COVID, IB replaced in-person exams. And they said they are going to use an algorithm to predict students' grades. And Isabel, a student who was fluent in Spanish, she was expecting a great score on her IB exam, and she hoped to use that as for her college. She received a failing grade. And what was happening here was that data proxies were being used. So the geographic location, school's historical performance on the exam, some of these data proxies were being used to calculate the score of the student. And this wasn't just a glitch. This was a design choice. And what it was doing was encoding and amplifying social inequalities. So these are two examples, and from here I would like to go on to what I want to talk about, critical data literacy. So something that is happening here and in many other systems is that there is misinterpretation, because when the context is stripped away, we think of the analysis and the results as truth, but there is more to each situation. There is reductionism. People are compressed into metrics, scores, labels, And finally, exclusion. So when we leave out outliers or do some sort of normalization, what is happening, whose experiences are being left out here. So something that I would like you to think about while you're listening to the rest of this is that do you think there are such blind spots in your field? You may be working with human beings or not, other kind of data, and do you think that there are these blind spots that these complex systems have that we do not think about every day? Going on to critical data literacy has a lot of definitions and a lot of ways in which people understand it. And I am using one of the definitions where critical data literacy means the ability to comprehend, critique, and participate in data practices. Also recognizing that data and data practices are not neutral and they are shaped by human decisions. And this expands the definition of data literacy, which focuses on technical skills, to a more emancipatory and a critical way of looking at data. Now, the 3 dimensions that I talked about, I just wanted to expand a little bit because I'm going to talk further about this. And so by comprehension, I mean the ability to understand how data are produced, one, represented, and also interpreted. By critique, I mean challenging assumptions and recognizing the social and political nature of data practices. And finally, participation, focusing on data for social good, advocacy, and transformation, and positioning users and ourselves as active agents who can affect change. Now, so this is all good. We heard about a lot of things. How do we use this in our own work, in our practices? So this is where I would like to say that you don't have to change the whole system. And you can start by working critically with data. And if you feel working critically with data is also difficult, you can start by thinking critically about data. So wherever you enter the data life cycle, you can start asking critical questions. And I have, so there are a lot of models about data lifecycle. So I have created some sort of a simplified version. And I have some critical questions that I have developed. These are starting points for reflection. And maybe you will be able to develop different questions from these bigger themes. So I'm going to talk about how to start thinking about this about critical questions and using our 3 subsections that we had talked about. So there are 4 different ways in which I feel we can divide any data lifecycle. So one is the origins, where we talk about data collection and creation. Also, the whole idea of how to identify what is data or defining data for my purpose. Then processing, so cleaning and transforming data. Usage, so where analysis and interpretation, things like that will occur, maybe even visualization, and the afterlives of data, so sharing data, archiving data, and reusing data. So when thinking about origins, here are some questions that we may think about. And if we want to use comprehension, one of the things that we can ask is, who created this data set, or who funded the creation of this data set? That might give us some leads into what underlying principles were used in defining and collecting this data. Now, when we go to the critique part, we can talk about who was excluded or included or misrepresented in this data. And then when we talk about participation, and this I think is a tough one because we are not very sure of how to include participation in our data lifecycle, and this may be a tougher one to actually implement. But some of the ways could be that could communities co-create, validate, or veto this data set. is there consent and accountability built into the documentation? Are we talking beyond just data ethics and going into these critical reflections? So this is about the origins of data. But when we go into processing, so cleaning and transforming data, we could ask what has already been done to this data? What sampling methods, normalization, or what features were included or excluded? And while critiquing, we can question what are the definitions of treating a data point as an outlier, as noise, and finally, in participation, we can make cleaning decisions transparent, invite collaborators to review these transformations. So this is how you can incorporate processing critically. And going on from here, going to usage, so analysis and interpretation, we can think about what story does this data help you tell, and how does it serve your project's aims? What are you, again, prioritizing or erasing? And in participation, and I like this part a lot, that how can we use this data to expose complexity and not hide it? And how do we share the findings with affected communities before we publish the reports from this data? So these are some important questions. And there could be other questions that you could ask based on your context, the type of data you are working with. Going on to the afterlives of data, so sharing, archiving, reusing, so asking where will the data set live next. And this is more than having a secured storage or only having researchers access to the data. So this has more to do with where this is going to live, how it's going to be repurposed or used after you are done with this data, or the team who had intended to collect it in the first place. How do you do that? Who benefits or who is going to be harmed by the ongoing circulation of this data? And in participation, we can think about how we can build off-ramps. So what are the sunset clauses? How can we have people do open annotations? And how do we have community feedback loops to govern these data futures? So this is an activity that I would like all of you to participate in. So some of the questions that I have, this is a Padlet. There's a Z-link also if you're unable to scan this QR code. So I am interested in what is your field, and at what stage of the data lifecycle do you enter? So you may not be the ones collecting data, and it may be a different stage of the data lifecycle. And based on this conversation, do you have a question? Do you have prompts? Do you have something that you want to share with a colleague? A takeaway, a tension, or you believe this doesn't apply to you at all? So anything, it can be anonymous. You don't need to add your name. So I would love to see what everybody has to share. Oops. Let's take about 3 minutes, and then we can talk and have questions and things like that. Also, you can comment on other people's posts or like them or things like that. So. So Secretive Koi has a question here. How do we catch issues like the described examples when we don't have access to the black box of algorithms? Um, I, I would say I don't have the answer, but there is something that I know a lot of researchers are using that's called algorithm auditing. So even though you don't have access to the algorithms inside, you do have access to the input and the output that you receive. And how can you put different inputs and look at the outputs and decide what your black box is doing? And whether it has some biases, it is giving you the kind of results that you had expected. And that is one way that I have learned about recently. Um, Thank you all for participating in this and letting me know about ideas. And we can take more questions. But before ending, I just wanted to share some of these resources. And I would like to believe that a lot of these are very simple to read resources. And some of the books, the first book, for example, The Critical Data Literacies, also talks about personal critical data literacy. So how we are giving away our information and our data on digital platforms, what we can do to resist it, to act, to create awareness about it. Then Data Feminism is also a great book which talks about looking at data from feminist and emancipatory lenses. Weapons of Math Destruction, I think Kathy was here last year, she gave a keynote. And then the last two are more like papers, but if you're interested in how researchers are talking about using these critical lenses for machine learning data sets or for big data, and we have a whole big field called critical data studies that talks about all kinds of I think areas apart from education too, and how we can use critical lenses to look at data and analysis. So that's about it. Thank you so much. And I can take any questions now.
Hello, that was a great speech. I liked it. My question is, in our schools, starting even from high school to college, that when I look overseas or our competitors, China, they're starting LLM training in first and second grade. We're not starting that. Maybe your senior, junior year, the kids are using the technology, but they're not really using it or understanding it. So my basic question is, how do we get these systems into our, I don't know, elementary schools or high schools more sooner?
Thank you for that question. And I feel more and more we are introducing the concept of critical computing, critical data literacy, and using data literacy across subjects. So using these tools in maybe a social science classroom and asking these important questions. Also, like I said, about their own personal data, there are a lot of programs, but I believe right now these are at a very nascent stage where some prototypes are being developed or they are being introduced in a classroom or two. But I think we are also going in that direction here in the United States. So maybe in a couple of years, we will see more about this. Thank you.
My question is kind of related to when you were talking about going back into the classroom and teaching and using those analytics. And after performing analytics from the LMS, were you able to initiate any change in your teaching or educational philosophy, like directly in the classroom with that same group of students?
Yeah. Thank you. That's a great question. And in fact, I found that using that data wasn't helpful for me. If a student wasn't showing up, wasn't participating, submitting their assignments on time, there was something going on, which was probably solved by having a conversation with them, finding out. So it did not work for me, and that's why I wanted to know more. That what are these underlying things that actually go into why students or learners take certain decisions or don't. One thing that I was able to understand, though, is the kind of modality that students enjoyed in terms of learning. So did they enjoy looking at a video versus reading a long text and things like that? So those decisions I was able to make, which were broader, but maybe personalized decisions, no. Thank you.
That was a really cool talk. Thank you. I guess I'm curious. So I think obviously there's like some substantial, I don't know, ethical questions about maybe taking demographic data and using that to extrapolate information about like student performance. But I'm wondering if that can at all be like a vehicle to maybe like say teach to students based on their cultural background. Like, is that something we can like learn for how to like teach better to specific students, seeing that like a lot of curricula are created on like, I don't know, a pretty undiverse demographic?
No, thank you. And that's a good wondering. And I think there would be examples of both, of people using demographic data and modifying their classrooms content to better accommodate these diverse set of students. But also with that data comes a lot of preconceived notions about certain groups of students and communities and how their engagement or disengagement in class can be, I don't know, interpreted. So it's a double-edged sword. And I think the whole idea is that it needs more context. So while this data or learning analytics could be a good starting point, there needs to be deeper investigation that the teacher or instructor needs to do. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for this insightful talk. And I really appreciate when you're talking about the critical data literacy. And I'm just wondering, how can we increase more engagement from stakeholders? So for example, in higher ed, more and more there's like talks about the return on investment of certain programs, for example, liberal arts, humanities degree programs. If we're just looking at how many years it would, like students will need to recoup their investment, they probably won't, you know, say start a job that gets paid as well as computer science students. So I just wonder, but that's a thing sort of decided by the governance in terms of how they want to evaluate this program. So I wonder, in terms of how to increase this critical data literacy, what would be the, like a professional suggestions from your side of things? Like we know that these are important, but we don't know how to get everybody involved and then reach a consensus on it.
Okay, thank you. And so one of the important things about critical data literacies is what I believe that it, again, can be used across majors or domains, and that it is something that maybe a liberal arts students can use as much as a computer science student. How we can integrate it is actually a question that I don't know how to answer. I'll have to find out more. I don't know a lot about how changes can be made to higher ed, but with data being a part of so many of our decisions, and with digital systems being everywhere, I do agree with you. It needs to be incorporated everywhere, and students need to be aware. But I'm still not sure. Like even with the K-12 questions, similarly with higher ed, changes are very slow, but I believe we can create awareness, and maybe instructors can include a thing or two in their own classrooms and start from there. But we'll have to wait and watch. Thank you.